Okay, so we're talking about Andrew Jackson, the presidency. And we're going to start out with the inauguration of Andrew Jackson. And we talked a little bit about this, and you saw a video on this, but we'll give you some more information. And we're going to move and move and move and try to get ourselves as far as we can this second semester so that we can start farther down next year. So, can you believe we've been at this a half a year already? It doesn't take long. Okay, it was on March 4th of 1829, March 4th of 1829, when Andrew Jackson was inaugurated into office as the nation's 7th president. It was on March 4th, 1829, in which Andrew Jackson was inaugurated into office as the nation's 7th president. Now, if you remember from the video, there were a lot of common people that voted for Jackson, and they were very jubilant over his election because they felt like the common man or common person was going to get a fair shake in federal government. And it mentioned on the video that the nation's capital was jammed with over 10,000 visitors, and that doesn't seem like a lot of people now compared to the inauguration that we're going to see in a week or about a week. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of people there, but 10,000 visitors in an inauguration at that time was a lot of people, and some even traveled as far away as 500 miles to get there. A lot different than now when you get on airplanes. So it was a little unusual. Now we mentioned on the video, it mentioned that after he was inaugurated into office, he held an open house in the White House. Remember? Anybody that wanted to come to the White House to his open house could come. And people just, all of his followers, a lot of these common people just jammed the executive mansion, which is another name for the White House, to be part of this open house. And it was quite a sight, and things got out of control. And I'm going to give you 4 examples of how things got out of control at the inauguration. Not the inauguration, excuse me, at the open house afterwards. Well, men in muddy boots climbed all over the chairs and tables in the White House. They had no sense of cleanliness, evidently, and they were frontiersmen. So men in muddy boots climbed on chairs and tables in the White House as they partied up during his open house, which led to the second thing. Much furniture was broken in the White House as a result of these actions. A lot of furniture was broken. There were really nice trays of food that were offered during the rambunctiousness of these visitors. They were knocked over, made a huge, huge mess inside the White House. And there was a few disputes over different things. So fights broke out all over the White House and around the grounds. So you had just kind of a debacle going on. Muddy boots all over the furniture, the tables, furniture broken in the White House, food trays splattered all over the White House, and fights both inside and outside the executive mansion. And it mentioned on the video that things got so out of hand. What did President Jackson have to do? Leave. They escorted him out so he wouldn't be hurt, and they took him to a hotel room to avoid injury. Well, the people that were wealthy, that were not for Jackson, were just appalled by this behavior of these common people, and those who witnessed the event that were from the wealthy end of things feared that King Mob had replaced law and order in the United States. Okay, the wealthy people were afraid that King Mob had replaced law and order in the United States. They thought the country was going to go to heck in a handbasket with this new president. There would be no law of order. The King Mob had taken over. What's the reference to King Mob? All these common people that, I guess in their opinion, had no sense to do things the right way. We've got a mob of people here acting badly, and this is what the country is going to turn into. So the inauguration was not probably a real positive thing, and it didn't hurt Jackson's popularity, obviously, because the people that were involved were the ones that were making the mess, but it just didn't look good in presidential social reigns. Okay? All right, well, that'll take us then to the presidency of Andrew Jackson. We'll tell you a little bit about how he was going to run the presidency. Presidency of Andrew Jackson. Now, it's kind of an interesting thing. Do you think that Donald Trump has carefully developed a political program so that when he takes over the presidency, he'll have some idea what's going to go on? I mean, he's picking all these people for his cabinet. I mean, definitely has a plan. He's putting together a political program. He's not going to go in there cold, right? Well, Andrew Jackson didn't do any of that. He went into the presidency cold. He had no carefully developed political program when he assumed the presidency. He had no plan. He based what he would do on 3 firm convictions or beliefs on how he was going to run the presidency. But he had no plan. He didn't step in with this plan and everything picked out and ready to go. He held 3 firm convictions or beliefs that he would use to run his presidency. And here are the 3 convictions or beliefs that Jackson had. Number 1, he believed the government belonged to all of the people who could vote, which included what? Wealthy, but also those that had normally not had much say in government, which were what? Common people. Okay? So his first belief or conviction was that anyone that had the right to vote had right to say in the government. Okay? That he believed the government belonged to all the people who could vote, not just a select few. The second thing he believed in was a limited federal government. He believed in a limited federal government, which would mean he'd have a strong conviction for what? What kind of control? Federal control or state control? Okay, so he was more of an advocate for state control because he believed in a limited federal government, which is kind of ironic because his third conviction kind of conflicted with that a little bit. He believed, the third thing he believed in was the power of the presidency. He believed in the power of the presidency, which means what? I believe in the power of the teachership. What do I believe in? I'm in control. What I say goes. Okay? So he was for limited federal government, but he believed in the power of the president. The president had full say. Okay? Now, one of the things that Jackson did when he first took office is he created something known as the spoils system of politics. Okay? One of the first things he did when he took office was create what's now known as the spoils system of politics. Now, what this means is he created a government where he replaced all political opponents, and who did he put in their place? Opposite of opponent would be a, what's that? Ally or supporter, okay? So what he did is he created a system of government where he replaced all of his political opponents that were in office with those people who supported him, okay? Now, have you ever heard this expression? Maybe you're too young. To the victor belong the spoils. You ever heard that? No one in here has ever heard that. Okay, I'll guarantee you when they give out the Super Bowl trophy for Super Bowl 51, one of those broadcasters will say, to the victor belong the spoils. What is the spoils of a Super Bowl victory? A trophy and the fact that you are world champions. Okay? To the victor belong the spoils. For the one person that wins belongs all the benefits of winning. Okay? Now if you think about this spoils system, and this is where that expression, to the victor belong the spoils, came from, what would this system encourage? It would encourage loyalty, would it not? Because you're going to put people in there that are your supporters. Does that necessarily benefit the government? Huh? Now this is a question I'm going to make. Kind of a little craw in my, or what do you call that, your craw? It's stuck in my craw. President-elect Trump has picked a new education secretary who has never had a kid in public education, who supports vouchers for private education, who does not support public education. Is that a good choice? In my opinion, that's a horrible choice. But why is he picking that person, do you think? Why would you pick a person that has nothing going for what you're talking about?
Because they're loyal.
They're loyal to him. And I think there's a perfect, my opinion, of a perfect example of the spoils system is Trump picking this person that has no public educational experience. To me, that's to the victor belongs the spoils. So my point is, Even though you have loyalty among your presidency, are you going to get anything done? If you have people that don't know what they're doing, you pick them not because of their experience, because they are loyal. Does that make any sense? Is he? Oh, you guys can, okay, perfect, all right.
So just trade.
I'll have to get a class created, but I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. So that's 5th period, right?
5th period, yeah.
Okay, got it, thank you. So, the spoils system wasn't necessarily good for government. In many instances, the people that were loyal to Jackson that were appointed to key positions in his cabinet were not experienced, and these appointees did not make decisions that were in the best interest of the country. So as a result of the spoils system, these appointees did not make decisions that were on the best interest of the country. Now, did Jackson think the spoils system worked? He thought it was great. But in reality, it caused a ton of problems in his administration. A ton. He's going to have troubles in his presidency because he did not put people in key positions that had experience. He put them in there because they were loyal. Now, that'll take us to our next subtopic, which was President Jackson's kitchen cabinet. He wasn't stupid. Now, a president creates a presidential cabinet where he picks a Secretary of State, a Secretary of War at this time, and all these types of positions, right? Well, Jackson did that, and again, he put people in those positions that were not really that good, and he believed in the power of the presidency. He could make decisions, okay? Well, one thing he did do that was kind of off the wall is he created what was known as his kitchen cabinet. Anybody want to guess what the kitchen cabinet might be? That the president might think he needs? Mr. Smith might put me in his kitchen cabinet. I'm not his assistant principal. I'm not a principal at East Side or West Side. I'm not an administrator. Why might he put me in his kitchen cabinet? As an advisor, exactly right. And that's what Jackson did. He picked several people as unofficial advisors. In other words, he did not appoint them to his cabinet. He would just meet with these people from time to time to get their opinion on things he was going to do. Okay? Now, how'd they get the name kitchen cabinet, do you think? Huh? What? Pretty close. They actually kind of stuck him in through the back door of the kitchen to bring him into the White House so nobody saw him, because he didn't want everybody to know that he had all these extra advisors. And so they snuck in the back door of the kitchen of the White House and became known in history as Jackson's kitchen cabinet. So again, the term kitchen cabinet came from Jackson's opponents. They're the ones that actually gave him that name, which meant these advisors entered the White House by the back door and met with the president in secret. Hey, Dane, come on in, buddy. What do you think some of these people were? Now think about them. I think you can use these people to your advantage. These are people you want to be friendly with if you're in positions. When I was principal here, I tried to be very friendly with these type of people, because these type of people I thought would give me good PR. I still try to stay friendly with these people concerning this class, so that this class gets good PR. Who am I talking about? What? Well, I kind of care about parents, not horribly dependent on them, because you guys are old enough I don't have to deal with your parents much. Who do I want to get good PR? Who would I want supportive to get great PR for this class?
School board.
What?
School board.
No. Who's going to give me good PR? Not necessarily. People that are jealous of this class wouldn't give us good PR. Who would give us good PR? Public relations. Where do you get that? Say it. Who am I going to get friendly with? The Daily News, the media. Because if they like me, and they like what I'm doing, do you think they're going to come up here and do an article on this class or do an art? Yeah. And so what Jackson did, a lot of the members of his kitchen cabinet were newspaper editors. He really wanted to get in good and have a really good relationship, a friendly relationship with the press. Because in politics, if the press like you, John Kennedy was a master of that, you get good press. If the press hates you, Richard Nixon was a master of alienating the press, and they were always on him all the time. Didn't like the press. Athletes, professional athletes that are friendly with the press, do they get a more positive outgo than those that aren't? Well, certainly they do. And Jackson was no fool. He really recognized the importance of a friendly relationship with the press, so a lot of his kitchen cabinet members were editors of newspapers. And he believed that these editors would help mold public opinion to his favor, that he would get good publicity, he would win support for policies that he wanted to pass if the media was behind him. You think that's all true? So that's what he did. A lot of his kitchen cabinet were members of the media, and especially the guys that mattered, the editors. Okay? Because he had a very, very good relationship with the press. But that was the kitchen cabinet. Now we're going to talk to you about some powerful congressmen in the United States. And we've talked about some important people, the famous three, right? See if we make any difference here. Now, Jackson was a funny guy. He believed that only the president could speak for the nation as a whole. He wasn't a guy that was really fond of using members of Congress. Remember, he wasn't very good in that endeavor, right? He did not have a legislative personality. So he really believed in the power of the presidency. However, at this time in American history, the three major regions of the United States were represented by three major powerful congressmen. And I'm going to tell you who those congressmen are and what area of the country that they represented. And Jackson's going to have to try in a ways to get along with these people if he's going to be successful. But again, he believes that only the president can speak for the nation as a whole. So here are the three major regions of the United States and the powerful members of Congress that represented those regions. The northeastern part of the United States. What type of people live there? We talked about it before. Very good. Merchants, manufacturers, bankers, property owners, rich people, like Macklin said, live in the northeastern part of the United States. Again, merchants, manufacturers, bankers, property owners, those types of people. Who do you think they were represented by from Massachusetts that we already talked about? It was one of the famous three. Somebody probably did a report on him. He could have written the dictionary, but he didn't. Daniel Webster of Massachusetts was the very powerful member of Congress who represented the northeastern part of the United States. The South, which were mainly planters, they were represented by a fellow that was vice president for a while from South Carolina, John C. Calhoun. Very good. John C. Calhoun of South Carolina represented the South. He went back into the Congress. And what area are we leaving out? The West. Okay? The western part, where western farmers and land speculators lived. They were represented by a senator from Missouri by the name of Thomas Hart Benton. Thomas Hart Benton. Now that name becomes a little important to me because I was a principal in Fort Benton, Montana. That's where Mr. Smith came from also. And that town was named after Senator Thomas Hart Benton. But he was a very powerful senator from Missouri, and he represented the West, which included western farmers and land speculators. Now, somebody has got to be there in Congress to kind of balance up the three regions and and make him compromise on occasion. And that was the job of the great compromiser. Anybody know who that was? Henry Clay. Very good. Henry Clay, who became known as the great compromiser, senator from Kentucky, he was the guy that was trying to balance the interests of the Northeast versus the West versus the South. Because don't you think they all have their own viewpoints on things? Certainly they do. And it would be Henry Clay of Kentucky, which we'll talk about later when we get into issues leading to civil war, in which the compromise is a very important thing and how his role affected them. So, powerful congressmen in the United States are people that Jackson's going to have to deal with, despite the fact that he believes in the power of the presidency. He's going to have to try to work with these people. Okay, any questions on that? Well, we're going to continue talking about President Jackson and his disdain for what? Indians. And that takes us to the next subtopic, which is President Jackson's Indian policy. President Jackson's Indian policy. Well, what was Jackson's feeling about Indians? He didn't like them much. Thought they were kind of primitive people. And he thought the tribes would be better if they lived where? Well, yeah, kind of. On land where? West of the Mississippi. So Jackson saw the Indians as kind of a primitive people, and he thought the tribes would be happier and they'd be much better off if they lived in lands west of the Mississippi River. He thought they maybe could keep their own ways of life, or maybe even gradually accept the practices of the white man. Now remember, the country